your marginal rate of consumption explodes.
Yeah.
When you're doing that on a global basis, it explodes beyond anybody's comprehension.
Right.
It's the largest demand shock the world had ever seen and will ever see. We will never repeat anything like that again. So obviously supply can't catch up with demand. So the oil price goes through the roof. All commodities go through the roof. Everything goes through the roof.
Right.
And so everybody's scrambling to catch up. America can't deal with running twin deficits and being pegged to gold. It's losing its gold supplies.
Yeah.
Its currency's too strong. And in 1971, Nixon walks away from the whole thing.
Yeah.
And we go to the fiat money system because it's unmanageable with this population boom going on and the rising inflation and all of the other pressures that are going on. By 1986, the baby boomers enter the workforce. The last baby boomer enters the workforce. Mm-hmm. So you've got this period, which we refer to as the Great Inflation, which most people think of as being a monetary phenomena. I think is a demographic phenomenon. I can prove it in every chart that I look at, proves that it was demographics.
Right.
The monetary side, of course, played a role. But the reality was, if you were to put the same setup anywhere in the world, regardless of what you're pegged against, you've got the same demand shock.
Right.
And the world can't keep up. Right now, as we're talking, we've got a supply shock. So, the demand has risen to normal levels, but supply has massively contracted. So prices rise. Mm-hmm. That tends to be offset quite quickly because as things come on, the general level of prices stabilizes again. Mm-hmm. Sure, the price doesn't fall; it never goes back. Mm-hmm. But it kind of stabilizes. So the other part of that equation is not the inflation. The really big story is the one that nobody understands: is that wages stopped going up. Mm-hmm. So in real terms, obviously, if you add a record number of people, like if you added record immigrants into the US right now, what happens? Wages don't go up.
Right.
And in fact, they never went up again.
Mm-hmm.
In real terms, since 1975, wages haven't gone up. They've gone up 0.3% a year
for
the median American.
And this is the infamous decoupling from productivity growth, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Exactly. Because GDP grew because of financialization. I'll come on to that in a minute. But this is where the real crux of the issue starts. So you put all these people in the workforce and you compete with each other. So they start competing for wages. So guess what? Nobody needs to pay higher wages.
Right.
And so these people have been promised the American dream. That was the dream of the 50s.
Yeah.
They saw their parents have that. And the baby boomers never got any of it. They got something entirely different. Suddenly, they got this weird world where fiat currency was being gradually debased, not like we have these days, but gradually debased by inflation, money supply issues, stuff like that. And asset prices start to rise. And their wages don't. Mm-hmm. And this is the key thing, is if your assets rise and your wages don't, your future self is poorer. Mm-hmm. Because an asset is a way of storing wealth for future consumption. Mm. But within this is an uglier picture as well, is the fact that if you split the population down between with kind of percentiles, the lower percentiles saw zero increase in wages, complete zero. Mm-hmm. So, the worker working in flipping burgers, a factory worker, zero increase. Right. The average, the median, as we said, the median worker saw about a 33% increase in real wages in 50 years. which is incredible compared to what happened to GDP and productivity.
Right. This is from 70 to 2020, you're saying?
70, yes, yeah, 70, 73, 74, something like that.
Okay, today.
Yeah, and then the average guy, because it takes into account the really wealthy skew, well, their wages have gone up 100% over those 50 years. So you're already seeing that bifurcation in people. So then if you think of that, and we'll come on to a lot more about this in a bit, but if you think of politics now, right, you think of the left and the right and the extremes of left and right, talking about not the middle ground, but the extremes of left and right are both really fucking angry because they've been left behind.
Right.
And nobody knows why, so they blame it on politics. But the reality is it's people having too many kids.
Right.
So they are really angry because both those parties have this base of the poor, but in different parts of the country. And those guys' lives never improved. They were promised a dream that never happened. They live in the world's richest nation, and they never got any of it.
Right.
And then all they're bombarded with is the imagery of the beautiful rich getting richer and how great America is. And they're like, well, what happened to us? Of course, you're going to cause populism.
Makes a ton of sense. So you're making the case here that, at least to some extent, the political polarization we are witnessing today is a reflection of this widening wealth disparity, this economic divergence.
Without question.
And that divergence itself, as you're saying, is driven largely by demographics, but there's also a significant monetary component here, which I'm sure you're going to go into. But I think this is an important thing for people to understand, is that politics is downstream of economics. Almost always. So it's not like you can go solve problems in Washington and fix this polarization. This polarization is symptomatic of a deeper economic divergence.
Yeah, and we'll get into that towards the end when we're trying to figure out between the two of us, how can we solve some of this? Because it's going to require not doing things that we've done in the past. Things that feel crazy or wrong to us are going to have to be tried and tested, because we cannot simply keep flipping from, well, we're going to support people in certain ways on the left, or we're going to hope we can get rich people to trickle down their wealth to poor people. I mean, we've done the same fucking thing now for 40 years, and it doesn't work.